The village of Ainla had never seen a wedding like this. From the moment the sun rose, dust roads were swept clean, palm fronds tied to wooden poles, and drums beaten with an excitement that echoed through the hills. Luxury cars, black, gleaming, unfamiliar, lined the narrow paths, their polished bodies reflecting the stunned faces of villagers who had never imagined such wealth would ever find its way to their quiet home. At the center of it all was Tayo Kunle. He arrived like a man stepping into a business meeting rather than a marriage. His tailored white egbado was flawless, his wrist heavy with a watch worth more than most houses in the village. His expression remained controlled, unreadable, as if the ceremony unfolding around him was simply another obligation to be checked off a list. This marriage was not born of love. It was born of tradition. Tayo's grandmother, frail in body but unbreakable in will, had demanded it. The Kunle bloodline, she insisted, must be tied back to its roots. A village bride, a proper wife, no more city women who chased fame and money. And for the first time in his life, Tayo Kunle had been unable to buy his way out. So he came, and so did Fumi. She stood beneath the old mango tree where village weddings had been held for generations, her modest lace gown carefully fitted, her head covered with a simple geli. There was no fear in her eyes, no awe at the billionaire she was about to marry, only quiet composure and a sadness she refused to let anyone see. Fumi had not chosen this marriage either, but unlike Tayo, she understood sacrifice. As the elders spoke blessings and prayers, Fumi listened with bowed head, her hands steady, her heart guarded. She had heard the whispers, how lucky she was, how her life was about to change, how poverty had finally released its grip on her. What they did not know was that money had never been what she wanted. When the vows were spoken, Tayo responded with confidence, his voice firm and unquestioning. Fumi's response came softer, steadier, as if she were promising herself more than she was promising him. By nightfall, the village celebration faded into silence. The newlyweds were driven away, not to the city, but to a newly built mansion at the edge of the village. It stood tall and foreign against the humble huts, a symbol of wealth planted where simplicity once lived. Inside the master bedroom, everything gleamed. Silk sheets, dim golden lights, expensive perfume lingering in the air. Tayo removed his jacket, loosened his cufflinks, and turned toward his wife with the expectation of a man who had never been denied. Fumi sat on the edge of the bed, her back straight, her hands folded neatly in her lap. When he reached for her, she stood up. "I need space," she said calmly. Tayo frowned. "We are married." She met his gaze, unafraid. Marriage does not mean closeness without care. The room fell into a tense silence. Fumi turned away, laying on the far side of the bed, her back to him, a quiet wall between them. Tayo lay awake, staring at the ceiling, anger and confusion churning in his chest. For the first time in his life, Tayo Kunle realized something unsettling. His wealth had brought him everything, except his wife's heart. And that night, in a marriage sealed by tradition and expectation, love remained completely absent. Morning arrived quietly in the mansion, but the silence felt heavier than the night before. Sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows, reflecting off polished floors and expensive furniture that still smelled new. Everything in the house spoke of wealth and perfection, yet nothing felt lived in. It was a beautiful space, cold and echoing, like a hotel built for guests who never stayed long. Fumi woke early. She rose from the bed without a sound, careful not to disturb the man sleeping on the other side. Tayo Kunle lay sprawled across the mattress, one arm over his eyes, his face tight even in sleep, as though rest refused to fully claim him. For a moment, Fumi studied him, the powerful billionaire, the man everyone feared and admired. Then she looked away. She wrapped herself in a simple cotton robe and stepped into the bathroom, closing the door softly behind her. Staring at her reflection, she whispered a prayer she had said many times before. "Give me strength." By the time Tayo woke, the bed beside him was cold. He sat up slowly, irritation crawling through him. He was not used to being the one left behind, not used to silence, not used to a woman who did not cling, complain, or attempt to impress him. He found her in the kitchen. Fumi stood at the wide marble counter, her sleeves rolled up, preparing breakfast with quiet focus. The scent of frying eggs and fresh tea filled the air, simple, unpretentious. It surprised him. "You don't have to do that," Tayo said, his voice firm. "There are staff." Fumi did not turn. "I know," she continued, stirring the pot. Tayo frowned. "Then why are you cooking?" She finally faced him, her expression calm. "Because I want to, not because I was bought." The words landed sharply. He watched her carefully now. There was no fear in her eyes, no eagerness to please, just dignity, solid and immovable. They ate in silence. Across the long dining table, Tayo studied her as if she were a problem he could solve with enough money or authority. Fumi ate slowly, her posture straight, her gaze fixed on her plate. To anyone watching, they looked like strangers sharing a meal, not newlyweds. Later that day, the house filled with visitors. Tayo's relatives arrived from the city, well-dressed, loud, curious, smiled politely at Fumi. Others looked her over with thinly veiled judgment. "So this is the village girl," one woman whispered, not softly enough. Fumi heard. She always heard. She greeted them respectfully, kneeling slightly as tradition demanded, her voice steady. Each greeting earned surprised glances. They had expected ignorance, timidity, gratitude. Instead, they found grace. Tayo watched from a distance, unsettled by the way she carried herself. She did not embarrass him. She did not beg for approval. She simply existed, whole and unbothered. That evening, as the house quieted again, Tayo finally confronted her. "You embarrassed me today," he said, loosening his tie, frustration evident. Fumi looked up from where she sat near the window. "How? You barely spoke. You didn't try to fit in." She stood slowly, meeting his gaze. "I am not an object to be displayed. I am your wife." The word wife echoed between them. Tayo opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time, he had no immediate response. That night, they returned to the same bed. This time, Tayo did not reach for her. Fumi lay on her side, facing the window, moonlight tracing the outline of her face. Tayo stared into the darkness, her words replaying in his mind. "I am your wife, not a prize, not a purchase, not a village trophy." Something shifted inside him, small, uncomfortable, unfamiliar. For the first time, Kunle wondered if winning Fumi's heart would require something he had never mastered: patience. The first real crack appeared on a market day. The village square was alive with color and sound. Women calling out prices, the scent of roasted corn hanging in the air, goats bleating somewhere in the distance. It was a place where life happened loudly and honestly, untouched by glass walls or polished marble. Fumi walked through the crowd with a woven basket in her hand, dressed simply, her steps unhurried. This was the world she understood. Here, no one bowed because of money. People greeted her by name, not by title. She did not notice Tayo Kunle at first. He stood near his SUV at the edge of the market, dressed in casual city wear, dark sunglasses shielding his eyes. He had followed her out of the mansion out of irritation more than curiosity. She had left without explanation, moving as though she did not need permission, and it bothered him. He watched as traders smiled at her, as she laughed softly at a joke from an old woman, as she bargained confidently for vegetables. There was ease in her movements, something natural, unforced. She belonged here in a way he never had. "Madame Kunle?" a voice called out loudly. Fumi turned. A young woman stepped forward, dressed boldly, city-styled, her makeup flawless. She held herself with practiced confidence. "I heard the billionaire brought home a village wife," the woman said with a thin smile. "I just wanted to see her." The crowd stilled. Tayo stiffened. He recognized the woman instantly. Sade, a former acquaintance from the city. Ambitious, beautiful, dangerous. Fumi met Sade's gaze calmly. "Now you have seen me." Sade laughed softly. Interesting. I expected less. Before Fumi could reply, Tayo stepped forward. His presence shifted the air around them. That's enough, he said firmly. Sade raised an eyebrow. Protective already? Fumi looked at Tayo then, not with gratitude, but with surprise. It was the first time he had openly stood between her and humiliation. Sade shrugged and walked away, but the damage lingered. That evening, tension filled the mansion like thick smoke. You didn't have to interfere, Fumi said quietly as they stood in the hallway. I won't allow anyone to disrespect my wife, Tayo replied. She studied him. Then don't bring people who will. The words stung because they were true. Later that night, power failed across the village. The mansion went dark, stripped of its lights and quiet hums. Candles were lit. Windows were opened. For once, luxury could not shield them. They sat in the living room, candlelight flickering between them. You don't belong here, Fumi said softly. Not because you're rich, but because you don't listen. Tayo leaned back, exhaling. I was raised to command, not to ask. She nodded. And I was raised to survive without being owned. Silence followed. Then, unexpectedly, he spoke again. Do you regret marrying me? Fumi hesitated. I regret being unseen. The answer cut deeper than anger ever could. That night, as rain began to fall and thunder rolled across the hills, Tayo lay awake once more, but this time not with pride wounded, with understanding. For the first time, the billionaire began to see the cost of the crown he wore, and the woman standing quietly beside him, waiting not for riches, but for respect. The rain did not stop until morning. It washed the dust from the village roads and left the air cool and clean, as though the world itself had been given a chance to begin again. From the bedroom window, Tayo Kunle watched a slow drip of water from the roof, his thoughts restless. Sleep had come late and lightly. For the first time in years, he woke without an agenda. No meetings, no calls, no deals waiting to be closed. Only his wife. When he stepped into the living room, he found Fumi sitting on the floor near the open windows, shelling beans into a wooden bowl. She wore a simple wrapper and blouse, her hair loosely braided, humming softly to herself. The scene felt real, untouched by wealth. Good morning, he said, uncertain. She looked up, surprised, then nodded. Good morning. He hesitated before speaking again. Can I sit? The question felt strange on his tongue, but he asked it anyway. Fumi shifted slightly, making space. Yes. He sat across from her, sleeves rolled up, the billionaire reduced to a man unsure of his place. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the soft tap of beans against wood. I don't know how to do this, Tayo admitted quietly. Fumi paused, then continued working. Do what? Be here, he said, without commanding everything. She finally looked at him fully, then stopped trying to own it. The words did not anger him this time. They settled. Later that afternoon, he followed her into the village, not as an overseer, but as a participant. He helped carry water, listened to stories from elders, watched children laugh at his awkward attempts to greet them properly. The villagers stared at first, then smiled. Fumi observed quietly. That evening, he surprised her again. I want you to show me, he said, standing beside her at the kitchen doorway. Your world, your way. Her hands stilled. Slowly, she nodded. They cooked together. Simple food. Shared laughter when he burned the onions. A softness easing into the space between them. It was the first time the mansion felt warm. At night, they sat outside beneath the stars, the village quiet around them. You're different today, Fumi said. I'm trying to be, Tayo replied. Not rich, not powerful, just present. She studied him for a long moment. Then carefully, she spoke. Romance isn't grand gestures. It's effort. It's being seen. He nodded. Teach me. When they returned to the bedroom, something had changed. He did not reach for her. He did not expect anything. Instead, he said, Good night, Fumi. She hesitated, then smiled. Good night, Tayo. And for the first time since their wedding, they slept without a wall between them. Not in touch, not in passion, but in peace. a beginning far more powerful than desire. Change did not come loudly. It came in small, deliberate moments, quiet choices that Tayo Kunle made each day, choices no one applauded and no camera captured. He woke earlier now, not because of business calls, but because Fumi did. He learned the rhythm of the village mornings, the way roosters crowed before dawn and women swept their doorsteps as the sun rose. One morning, Fumi stepped outside and stopped short. A small wooden stool sat near the veranda, freshly sanded. Beside it lay a simple flower in a clay cup. "What is this?" she asked. Tayo emerged, sleeves rolled up, dust on his hands. "You said you liked sitting here in the evenings. I thought this might be more comfortable." It was not expensive, it was not dramatic, but it was thoughtful. Fumi said nothing, only sat down slowly, testing the stool. When she looked up again, her eyes were softer. Later that day, gossip arrived before visitors did. Whispers spread through the village and beyond, that the billionaire's marriage was failing, that the village girl had trapped him, that he would soon return to the city and forget her. Fumi heard it all and carried it quietly, as she always had. That evening, Tayo found her staring out at the hills. "They're talking," she said without turning. "They always do." He stepped beside her. "Let them." She shook her head. "Words grow roots." He was silent for a moment, then said, "Then we will give them nothing to feed on." The next day, he proved it. Tayo attended the village meeting with her, not standing apart, not issuing instructions, but sitting beside her on a wooden bench. He listened, he laughed, he greeted elders properly. When someone questioned his presence, he replied simply, "This is my home." The words traveled faster than any rumor. That night, Fumi cooked his favorite meal, one he had mentioned only once in passing. When he noticed, his brows lifted. "You remembered," he said. She nodded. "I'm listening too." Something unspoken settled between them. Later, under the soft glow of lantern light, Tayo reached for her hand, not claiming, not demanding, asking. She did not pull away. "You're learning," she said quietly. "I want to keep learning," he replied. For the first time, when they lay down to sleep, Fumi turned toward him, not with fear, not with obligation, with trust. And in that simple movement, Tayo Kunle understood that romance was not a performance. It was presence, it was patience, it was effort. And love, real love, was finally finding its voice. Peace, Fumi would later learn, was fragile. It lasted just long enough for her to believe in it. The first sign came with the sound of a helicopter cutting through the quiet sky one afternoon. Villagers stopped mid-step, shielding their eyes as dust swirled across the open field near the mansion. Expensive cars followed soon after, engines humming with authority that did not belong to the village. The world Tayo Kunle came from had arrived. Men in suits stepped out first. Then women with sleek hair, sharp heels, and eyes that measured everything. Cameras followed. Phones were raised. Whispers spread like fire. Tayo stood at the veranda, his jaw tight. "I didn't invite them," he said when Fumi came to stand beside him. "I know," she replied softly. The media had caught wind of the billionaire who had disappeared into a village with a bride no one could profile or predict. They wanted answers, stories, scandal. By evening, the headlines were already forming. Billionaire abandons empire for village wife. Is Tayo Kunle losing control? Marriage crisis or strategic retreat? Fumi read none of them, but she felt their weight in the way the house grew tense and unfamiliar again. That night, Tayo received a call he could not ignore. His business partners wanted him back in the city, immediately. Deals were stalling. Investors were nervous. His absence was being interpreted as weakness. "You've changed," one voice said sharply through the phone. "And change makes people dangerous." When he hung up, Fumi was watching him. "You have to go," she said gently. He shook his head. "Not like this." "You don't belong to only one world," she said. "But neither do I." The words stayed with him long after she had gone to bed. The next morning, the mansion was surrounded again. This time by curiosity rather than celebration. Some villagers were proud. others uneasy. Old fears resurfaced. That wealth would swallow one of their own and spit her back out broken. Fumi felt it in the way greetings hesitated. Later that day, Saad returned. She stepped out of a polished car like she owned the ground beneath her feet. Dressed impeccably, confidence sharpened by opportunity. "You're glowing," she said to Fumi with a practiced smile. "Marriage suits you, for now." Tayo appeared instantly. "This is inappropriate," he said coldly. Saad shrugged. "I came to warn you. The city is not forgiving. If you don't return, you'll lose everything." Tayo met her gaze. "Then I'll lose it." Fumi turned to him, startled. That night, the argument finally came. "You can't throw your life away for me," Fumi said, standing in the bedroom, emotion breaking through her calm for the first time. "They will blame me." "I'm not throwing it away," Tayo replied. "I'm choosing." She shook her head. "You don't know what that costs." "Then let me learn," he said, "the same way I'm learning you." Silence filled the room, heavy and trembling. "I'm afraid," Fumi whispered. He crossed the space between them. Not to hold her, not yet, but to stand close enough for her to feel his presence. "So am I," he admitted, "but I won't let the world take you from me before I've truly earned you." That night, they lay awake, hands close but not touching, listening to the distant hum of generators and the softer rhythm of the village beyond the walls. Love was no longer just between them. It was being tested. And for the first time, both of them understood that choosing each other would require courage far greater than desire. The city did not wait. By dawn, Tayo Kunlei's phone would not stop vibrating. Calls from board members, messages from investors, headlines sharpening their teeth. The world he had built was demanding his return, loudly, urgently, without patience. Tayo stood alone on the veranda, the morning air cool against his skin, watching villagers begin their day. Women swept their compounds. Children laughed on their way to the stream. Life moved forward, untouched by stock prices and power plays. Behind him, Fumi watched quietly. "You should go," she said again, though her voice carried no command, only concern. He turned to her, "Not without you." She shook her head slowly. "If I follow you now, they will say I chased your wealth. If you stay here, they will say I ruined your empire." He stepped closer. "Then I will speak." By midday, the crowd gathered without invitation. Media vans lined the road. Villagers stood at a distance, curious and uneasy. Business associates waited, impatience written across their faces. Even Sade lingered at the edge, confident that the world would choose power over principle. Tayo walked forward. No suit, no security detail, no prepared statement. Just a man in a simple shirt, standing beside his wife. "I built my life on control," he began, his voice steady but unguarded. "I believed success meant never needing anyone. I was wrong." Cameras clicked, murmurs rose. "This woman," he continued, turning slightly toward Fumi, "did not marry my money. She married a stranger and taught him how to see." Fumi's breath caught. "I am not abandoning my responsibilities," Tayo said. "I am redefining them. My business will adapt. My life already has." Silence followed, heavy, uncertain. One by one, questions were shouted, doubts, warnings. Tayo answered none of them. Instead, he reached for Fumi's hand, openly, confidently, without fear of interpretation. The image traveled faster than his words ever could. By evening, the crowd thinned. Some investors left in frustration, others in reluctant respect. The village breathed again. That night, Fumi sat with him beneath the stars. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "I did," he replied, "because love hidden is love doubted." She studied him for a long moment, then rested her head against his shoulder. For the first time since their wedding, the choice was clear, not forced by tradition, not shaped by fear, chosen. And in that choice, Tayo Kunle finally became more than a billionaire. He became a husband. The village exhaled. After the cameras left and the last luxury car disappeared down the dusty road, life slowly returned to its familiar rhythm. The scandal that had threatened to swallow everything softened into curiosity, then into quiet respect. People spoke less about money and more about choice. For Fumi, the days became gentler. She no longer felt watched when she walked to the stream or bargained in the market. Smiles came easily now, no longer edged with pity or suspicion. She carried herself the same way she always had, but something in her steps was lighter. For Taiyo Kunle, the transformation was deeper. He built a small office near the village, simple and open, refusing the glass towers that once defined him. Meetings were shorter, decisions were slower and better. He listened more than he spoke, and when he came home, he came fully, not distracted by screens or power. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky gold, Taiyo found Fumi planting vegetables behind the house. "Why here?" he asked, kneeling beside her. "So we remember," she replied, pressing soil gently around a seedling. "Food grows where care stays." He smiled at the lesson. That night, for the first time, there was no space between them in bed, not forced, not rushed, just closeness born of trust. Taiyo reached for her, slow and deliberate, watching her eyes, waiting. She did not turn away. She placed her hand over his. "Now," she whispered, not because of duty, not because of marriage, but because love had learned how to stay. Morning found them wrapped in quiet warmth, the kind that needed no words. The world outside still existed, business, pressure, expectation, but it no longer ruled them. At breakfast, Fumi laughed, a soft, unguarded sound Taiyo had never heard before. "I think," she said, "you're finally romantic." He raised an eyebrow. "Only now?" She smiled. "Romance is not speed, it's patience." As the sun climbed higher, the village moved on around them, unaware that something powerful had settled into place. A love that did not announce itself, a marriage no longer built on obligation, a choice made every day. And in that quiet, lasting peace, Taiyo Kunle and Fumi discovered that true wealth was not in what they owned, but in what they protected together. Years passed, not loudly, not dramatically, but with the steady grace of something well-nurtured. The village that once whispered about the billionaire and the village girl now spoke their names with warmth and certainty. Taiyo Kunle was no longer introduced by his net worth, but by his presence. He greeted elders with respect, joined community meetings without pride, and listened, truly listened, when others spoke. His wealth still existed, but it no longer defined him. And Fumi, she had grown into a quiet pillar. She became the heart of the home and the bridge between worlds. She started small programs for girls in the village, teaching skills, offering guidance, reminding them that dignity did not depend on marriage or money. She wore her simplicity with pride, even as her life expanded beyond anything she once imagined. Their home reflected them both. Not excessive, not empty, but full. Laughter echoed often, especially after children arrived. Two little souls with Taiyo's curious eyes and Fumi's calm strength. They grew up barefoot and well-loved, learning both humility and confidence, understanding that privilege was a responsibility, not a crown. At night, when the children slept, Taiyo and Fumi would sit together under the stars. Sometimes they spoke of the past, the awkward beginnings, the cold nights, the misunderstandings that nearly broke them. Other times, they sat in silence, hands intertwined, content in the comfort they had built. "You know," Taiyo once said softly, "I thought love was something you impress." Fumi smiled. "Love is something you protect." He looked at her then, not with pride, not with possession, but with gratitude. Years later, when Taiyo's story was told in business circles, they spoke of a man who redefined success, of a billionaire who chose peace over pride, purpose over power. But in the village, his legacy was simpler. They said, he learned how to love. And Fumi, her legacy lived in every girl who stood a little taller, every home that felt a little safer, every marriage that remembered that romance was not performance, but presence. As the sun set on a life fully lived, Taiyo Kunle and Fumi remained side by side, not because tradition demanded it, not because vows bound them, but because love, patient, humble, and intentional, had chosen to stay. True love is not measured by wealth, power, or grand gestures. It is built on presence, patience, and effort. A relationship flourishes when both partners choose each other every day, protect one another, and grow together. Riches may come and go, but the wealth of trust, understanding, and genuine connection lasts a lifetime. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating billionaire romance tales. Stay tuned for more stories where love